And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
It was called the Red Summer of 1919, named for the blood that ran through America's cities during months of racial unrest. African-American soldiers had returned home from the Great War, World War I, to a country still teeming with discrimination. And in their quest for civil rights, tensions between blacks and whites reached a tipping point. Deadly race riots broke out in over 24 cities, but one rural town, Elaine, Arkansas, would become the epicenter for the bloodshed. The violence there, lynch mobs, torture, indiscriminate murder, was so horrific it would go down in history not as a race riot, but as the Elaine Massacre. This is history. Dark history. During World War I, more than 350,000 African-American soldiers enlisted to serve. But while they fought for democracy abroad, their own country, America, was still not willing to see them as equal.
White supremacy was very mainstream at this time in the United States. Basically, a lot of African Americans were seeking to obtain their full rights and equality in the United States, and violence was often used by mobs of whites.
Tensions reached a boiling point in the summer of 1919. Race riots broke out in dozens of cities across the country. But in the rural South, something even more menacing was taking form. There, slavery existed in all but name. In a system called sharecropping, farmers provided landowners with labor for a share of crops produced. But the system was rigged. Sharecroppers were often kept in perpetual debt.
One black sharecropper raised $500 worth of cotton, and his landlord told him, "Yeah, but you used $697 worth of supplies, so you owe me money."
On the night of September 30th, 1919, Union members gathered in Elaine to discuss their legal plan.
This is in Phillips County. It's basically just a crossroads at this time, a road, a few houses, a railroad siding, no streetlights. There's also a one-room wooden church, and that's where the Union met. Expecting that they might have trouble, the Union posted a guard of about 6 men. They had shotguns and rifles. The meeting's taking place, and while they're having this discussion, a car rolls up the road.
2 white men were in the car.
By one account, one of the white men in the car said, "You all get away from there." And shortly thereafter, a shot was fired.
Though it remains unclear who fired first, a barrage of gunfire broke out. One of the white men was killed almost instantly. The rumor of a black uprising spread in a matter of hours. The idea of a sharecropper rebellion conveniently played into the hands of landowners who did not want their sharecropping practices scrutinized. They did all they could, as quickly as they could, to sound alarms that black farmers were out for white blood.
The story gets magnified that the town is under attack, that blacks are killing people in the streets, that there is a revolution afoot.
The sharecroppers quickly formed self-defense groups, expecting repercussions over the death of a white man. But they could not have predicted just how severe the response would be. The following morning, under the watchful eye of Sheriff Frank Kitchens and his deputies, posses of white men were sent to find, detain, and kill the offenders.
When you have an out-of-control mob just being told there's a Negro insurrection going on, that mob is being very indiscriminate in its violence. You see houses being attacked, black-owned homes being ransacked.
The black school was burnt, notable families were killed.
Black women and children have to go literally hide out in the woods because many of these people are indiscriminately shooting at African American women and their children.
Black veterans and other African Americans took up arms in self-defense.
This no doubt just feeds into the mob fervor. The fact that, oh, they're daring to shoot back at us. This must really be an insurrection.
One historian has identified more than 20 different killing sites where African Americans were being killed.
There are stories that mob members were taking souvenirs, such as ears or fingers from the bodies of fallen African Americans.
One of the leading black families of the county, they weren't even in the town. They had just received a brother back from the French front. They are pulled from a train, put in the back of a car, and they are stabbed, shot, and their mutilated bodies are left on the side of the road.
Within 2 days, 500 U.S. troops were sent to quell the supposed black uprising.
They don't find any blacks killing or shooting down the streets. In fact, Colonel Jenks reports that the city is filled with hundreds and hundreds of white men with guns. Many of the individuals who were hiding in the thickets were former soldiers who had just gotten back from the war. And when they see the army troops come, they rush out, believing that the army troops are there to assist them. The army believes that these people are rushing toward them to attack, and they're cut down by machine gun fire.
Although the exact number will never be known, a recent estimate suggests 237 black men, women, and children were killed. There was an immediate demand for justice, but not for the black lives lost. 5 white men were also killed in the fighting. Hundreds of African Americans were rounded up and put in jail, and when the jail was full, they detained the rest in a schoolhouse.
While they are detained, there is torture going on.
The goal? To elicit false confessions of a black uprising.
They whipped the men, whipped them for long periods of time. They stuffed formaldehyde up their noses, and they stripped them naked and shocked them with electrical charges. They did this until they confessed to the conspiracy.
Want to say peace and blessings to everyone that's tuning in tonight. Just thought I'd do a last-minute special edition of the Playbook Memorial Day. I know many are celebrating Memorial Day. Many that are prior military, that are military veterans, those that are currently enlisted in the military, whether it's active duty or reserve. And many of you may be a spouse or son or daughter, or just have relatives that served in the military. And I just thought I'd do a special Memorial Day edition of what many are celebrating today. And I sit back and I served in this country for 8 years. I'm a former Air Force. I was in the Air Force for 8 years. I don't know why I was going to say 10, but I was in the Air Force for 8 years. And I served this country for 8 years. I traveled all around this world. And want to talk about that and tie it into the scriptures. When we think about Memorial Day and you start doing the history of it, Decoration Day is what it was initially called, but it was to honor the soldiers who had fought in multiple wars, such as the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, but also the World War One and World War Two and the Vietnam War and the Korean War. Those things are put in place for that, to celebrate those things. And so when I look back and think about the history, the more you start taking the layers off in our about the history of what we had to deal with as a people, what we within this country, and the things that we were subjected to and still currently being subjected to. Like one of the articles I shared of how a detective up in Philadelphia was caught, uh, raping, molesting, sodomizing 35 men. That's what he was caught with, but he did far more than that, of men from within our community. I could go right down the list, even sharing some of the stories of even me being in the military and had to deal with that racial component. But I really want to deal with this because, and I'm not trying to knock anyone for serving in the military. I'm not trying to knock that, but I do want to tie that into Deuteronomy 28:68. Some of you guys have seen this teaching, but I modified it a little bit, but really want to reiterate Deuteronomy 28:68. And this curse, or should I say consequences, ties right in with our community. This consequence. Now, many of you will refer to the Deuteronomy 28 as the blessings and the curses. Truth be told, that's not how you would approach it if you understand the text. The curses are actually listed in Deuteronomy chapter 27. 12 curses are listed. Then once you get to the beginning of chapter 28, you see the blessings. The first 15 verses cover the blessings. And then from verse 16 on down to 68, basically the next 45 verses deals with the consequences. So let me say that again. So chapter 27 of Deuteronomy deals with the curses. The curses are listed there. Deuteronomy chapter 28 begins with the blessings. So you have the curses, the blessings, and then from verse 16 on, you see the consequences. The consequences for breaking the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. So I want to really deal with this here and deal with the curses so that way you can really understand, family. We as a community, and this is not putting down our community. This is just stating the truth. We as a community, as a whole, we are sick. We are sick because of the number of things that we had to be subjected to. We're the only community that allowed another community to create a Messiah, to create a Christ. When you look at every other community, their ethnic groups, you will see that their Messiah is a reflection of them. But our community is the only community that we embrace a Messiah that was created, manufactured, and given back. And we embrace that Messiah, not understanding the psychological impact behind it, not realizing that Messiah that many are worshiping looks just like the very people that have enslaved your ancestors, that have raped and molested and done a number of different things to your ancestors, who entered into a covenant with other countries, other nations. But we don't talk about that transatlantic world war like we should. It was a transatlantic world war. We don't talk about the Gullah Wars like we should. You don't even hear about the Gullah Wars. And we're going to recap on the Gullah, just a little bit on the Gullah, because I just want to reiterate a certain point when it comes to that. We can embrace and encourage and defend constructs, social constructs that was created in the 18th, the 19th century by a German by the name of Johann Blumenbach. We can gravitate and defend and fight tooth and nail for the color black, for that term black, which it has no meaning in terms of in telling you who you are as a people, us as a people. It doesn't tell you what ethnic group or what tribe or, what country in Africa you descended from. But we see layers and layers and layers and layers of generic terms that we embrace. We celebrate, and I'm not putting down celebrating, for example, a lot of the milestones we as a people have been able to achieve in the country and many other countries that have enslaved us. For example, many would celebrate Prince Hall. Many would embrace him because he was the first, quote, black man to become a Freemason in this country and to establish a lodge. But we celebrate him as being the first black man to do so, but not realizing just because that's a major accomplishment, but that's not the heritage, that's not the culture that the Most High has for our community. Even when I start looking at the educational systems, the very systems that enslaved our people, the very system that used our ancestors as collateral. We're going to touch on that. The very system that used our ancestors as collateral. And now we use those same systems, allow those same systems, instead of using it as a tool to come back and edify and educate our people, we use those tools to carry on the spirit of those that have enslaved our people. And we're going to touch on the major institutions did not allow us to be educated from there. Why? Because at the time we were their product. They used us as collateral to build those institutions. And I'm seeing a lot of celebrations on it. That's why I really don't flaunt around my credentials. That's why I don't get caught up even with the title of being a pastor. And I don't really get caught up. I do it for protocol in terms of in the assembly. And we do have to respect protocol, but I really don't get caught up in it. I don't throw around my military experience. I don't throw around my rank. I don't throw around any of those things. Why? Because they were a tool to get me to where I am right now, to get me access to certain things, to use it to help educate, even if it's just one of within our community, grab hold of it and understand that use your gift to bring our people out of this situation and bring us back to the Most High. Guys, there's so many layers to this. And we don't even understand when I'm seeing many talk about Tulsa, Black Wall Street, and don't really understand the depth of why Tulsa was bombed, but don't understand the depth of our history to know that there was at least 36 other communities just like Tulsa. Not even realizing in the 80s, Philadelphia community in Philadelphia, our community was bombed, but we celebrate. Even when you think about, and this is why I want to reiterate the term Gullah Geechee, because we're so warped as a people that we celebrate terms. We celebrate terms. Gullah, yeah, is a Hebrew word. Geechee, we celebrate these terms, not realizing we are that people. Oh yeah, I got Gullah Geechee in my family. No, you are. We are the same people. We gravitate to words as if it's a fraternity, still operating in that fraternity sorority mentality that have been injected into our people, hacked into our people. Even many using this awakening as a fraternity or sorority, even how the text is being taught, such as Abraham became a Hebrew when he crossed over. That's the spirit of fraternity. That's the spirit of sorority. That's the spirit of secret society. And we see secret society is all around us. That system, the system of man, 666. That's what it means, the system of man, because man was created on the sixth day. So let's delve into this. I want to say peace and blessings to everyone here. And we'll go through some of the roll call at the end of the lesson because I want to dive right into it. And then I see my man Jay Highstyle, I see Sister Carol holding it down. I see my cousin Ruhama. I really appreciate you guys, all of you guys, for tuning in. And we're going to do our shout outs, but we'll save it for the end of the presentation, just so that way we can really save time and go right into it. Because guys, I got a lot I'm going to share over the next couple of weeks. From language, address a lot of the foolishness of what many want to come put together to mock and laugh using the term shalom. And I'm going to deal with that stuff. I'm going to shut down a lot of discussions. I'm going to show you that shalom, if you want to laugh at shalom is ancient Hebrew facts. But shalom, I can prove to you that they did not, our ancestors back in the antiquities did not use the word shalom. I'm going to show you even the Syriac block letters that we use right now. The Syriac block letters, I'm going to show you, and I put a little a touch of it on in the community center on this page, showing how the alap or aleph from the Syriac block letters, how, just to give you a little snippet of how that come about, with the snake wrapping around a pole and showing that relates to phallic worship. See, I'm going to take it really deep here over the next few weeks. So yes, some of you guys may not even be aware, right? There was no O sound in the Hebrew language. When you start dealing with the Masoretic points, right? That was created in the 9th century. The original colon, right? In the colon vowel is the vowel letter, right? In other words, a letter being used as a vowel made an ah sound, not an O sound. So when you say shalom, right? That's not ancient Hebrew. That's 9th century pronunciation. Actually, not even 9th century, because back in the 9th century, they did not say shalom. So we're going to delve into that a little later, but let's delve into this here. Let's delve into this right here. Let me enlarge my screen here. And let's walk through Deuteronomy 28:68. And I'm going to add a few other things to it as well. But let's start with the Gullah. I'm going to, just a refresher, family, and please grab hold of this. Who are the Gullah? Who are the Gullah? The term Gullah refers to a social group of antebellum people of Black African descent and their descendants who experienced chattel slavery in the southeastern part of the United States, as well as their lingua franca. The term Gullah was used in the United States before the Civil War to refer to enslaved Africans who were born on the African continent and the language they brought with them. And we're going to do a playbook on the lesson or the interview that Moray Brown did earlier. I got a playbook. I'm going to do a playbook on that. He shared some key information, but I want to reiterate this again. When you say Gullah, when you say Geechee, it's the same people. We are the same people. Don't think that this is someone different, like it's a different tribe. No, this is you. This is me. We're descendants of them. And Gullah Geechee, no, it's not just South Carolina, the coast, North Carolina, the coast, Georgia, Florida. No, it goes further. You can take it to Georgia, as far as Alabama. We're going to touch on just a little bit, but I want to reiterate, you are part of the community. Gullah Geechee is you. You are descendants of slaves in this country that have rebelled. Each one of us are part of that, connected to them. That's all it means. Gullah Geechee, that's all it means. It's just designating a group of slaves that rebelled. We are descendants of those who have rebelled. We are the same people. So when you hear that term Gullah Geechee, don't just say it like it's a separate group by saying, hey, you know what? I got Gullah Geechee. I got Gullah Geechee. No, my grandmother, or my grandmother's side, or my father's side is Gullah Geechee. No, we all are the same people. So I wanted to make that clear. I want to reiterate this point here. Let's deal with the word Geechee. The term Geechee refers to a social group of antebellum Gullahs, right? Gala, redemption, right? Revelation. So the term Geechee refers to a social group of antebellum Gullahs and their descendants who not only established maroon communities in the southern Georgia and northern Florida after running away from slavery in the 18th and 19th century, but also became a component of the Seminole Nation as well. Notice what it says. Geechee established, it says, who not only established maroon communities in southern Georgia and northern Florida. This is where you get into the Gullah Wars. It's the same people. Our ancestors came in through the ports of Savannah, came in through the ports of Charleston, came in through the ports of Jamestown. The same people. I want to reiterate that. The same people. So we have to stop referring to Gullah Geechee as if it's a separate group, a separate tribe, because the Gullah Geechees, it was multiple tribes. One of the most recognized tribe is the Igbos. And it's a fact that at least 1 out of every 4 slaves that was on those slave ships were Igbo. And we can add Bantu to it. And they're all what? The same people from different areas of Africa, but the same people. Be on the lookout for The Road to Savannah Part 2, because I'm going to really drop some really good information there. So again, it says here, who established maroon communities in southern Georgia, in northern Florida after running away from slavery in the 18th and 19th century, but also became a component of the Seminole Nation as well. Moreover, many Gullahs, such as the Geechees, managed to escape slavery You see what I'm saying? You see these terms? These are the same people. Many gullahs, such as the Geechees. These are just terms to further divide our people. And if you go back and listen to the lesson I did on the Gullah Wars, how the Caucasians here in this country during that time, they were even making up names of Indian tribes to cause what? Separation, to cause division. So I want you to understand this, guys, because the way that even this source that I'm sharing with you, it has some great information in it, but I can pick some of the things apart, like right here, many gullahs such as the Geechees, which how it should be properly classified. Many of our ancestors were able to escape slavery, not just saying gullahs such as the Geechees, because this is actually pushing the narrative. It said became Maroons before the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. How can they become something? Anyway, let me show you what this means. Let's deal with this here. Let's build on this. What is the meaning in the origin of Seminoles? Let's see what Seminoles mean. You guys remember this. It says here, wild, untamed runaway, right? But then it goes on to say they fought wars against the United States troops, 1817 through 1818, and 1835 through 1442, when actually this was a continuous war. But notice what it says, after which they largely were removed to Indian Territory, Oklahoma. This should raise a red flag. Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. The Emancipation Proclamation, that guess what? That happened well before Abraham Lincoln came into play. Our ancestors were free well before Abraham Lincoln came into play. And many of them landed Georgia, Louisiana, Mexico, Texas, landed in Oklahoma, even as far as Los Angeles, California. But these terms that is created is to create further separation. And if you remember, if you go back to the lesson I gave last week on the Gullah Geechees or the Gullah Wars, I shared with you how they were purposely removing key names like Negro, Black, slave, because they did not want to give the impression, they did not want the slaves that they still had in captivity to know that our ancestors were really were conquering and dominating the U.S. troops. So they largely were removed to Indian Territory, Oklahoma. Let's deal with the word maroon because it tells us to go to maroon, right? So maroon, very dark red or crimson color. You see chestnut. It goes on to say the verb portion of it, put ashore on a desolate island or coast. It goes on to say to be lost in the wild. Notice this, fugitive, Black slaves living in the wilder parts of Dutch Guyana or Jamaica and other West Indies islands. This still ties into our people. But the way that how history is written, it'll make you think that we are different people. We are still the same people. Our ancestors in Jamaica, our brothers and sisters in Jamaica, we're still the same people. West Indies islands, we are still the same people. Goes on to say wild, untamed, unruly, fugitive. But then it goes on to say a fugitive Black slave. So how do we get a separation in all of these words? We're still the same people. And as you see, that is the color of maroon. That is the color of maroon. Let me say that again. That is the color of maroon. Maroon chestnuts is what they highlighted. Put your finger up against that image. We are the same people. But what's sad is we've allowed these constructs, and many of these constructs, like the term Yoruba, guess what? That's not a name that was originally created by our people. It was created by the colonizers. Do the history on it. They created a lot of constructs and we gravitate to them. We use it as a badge of honor. While all along they looking at our community like, look, these guys don't have a clue. But we're bragging, hey, I'm Gullah Geechee. I'm Gullah, I'm Geechee. Hey, I'm Maroon. Hey, I'm Seminole. And don't even realize we are all the same people. So this is why I want to put exactly, my brother Jay Highstyle. This is why I put these images up, because when I did the Gullah Wars, I didn't have this image. I meant to put it in there so that way you can see for yourself, family. This is you. This is me. This is we as a people. So what's the connection between Gullahs and the Seminoles? We're the same people, right? The runaway Gullahs were called Indian Negroes or Seminole Negroes. But guess what? We're still the same people. Remember, Negroes back at this time was interchangeable with slaves. So Seminole slaves. It was interchangeable with slave in this country. So the Gullah who had liberated themselves, in other words, the Negroes who had liberated themselves from slavery in Georgia, combined with this group as well as other contingents of Southeastern Indians to form what evolved into the Seminole Nation. That's a whole nother discussion we're going to get into, not tonight though. So how significant was the Seminole Wars or the Gullah Wars or the Negro Wars, however you want to classify it? The Negro Wars, how significance, and we shared this the last week, and I'm not going to go over this again, but we're going to touch on this. We're going to go into this even more. But as you see here, the bullet number 1, the 3 Seminole Wars dating from 1816, right? Then it goes on to highlight 1816 to 1818, 1835 to 1842, 1855 to 1858, and I'm going to give you more dates. A more of an accurate date, because actually the Gullah Wars lasted for almost a century. And this is not a century up on your screen here. This is not even 50 years that's on your screen. So let's delve into this here. This is one of the things we hear a lot. This is one of the talking points many of the communities try to use to trip you up, to trip you guys up. This is what they use to try to trip you up, to kind of throw a monkey wrench into your arguments of knowing who you are. You say that you're Israel and Yahweh Elohim, in other words, it transliterates to Lord God, is going to bring you into Egypt again. Then why are you in the United States and not in Egypt? This is one of the questions that they will ask you. This is one of the talking points that they make, but most of our brothers and sisters are not able to articulate this. And I'm going to show you how to properly answer this question. It's very easy. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28:68. Let's do some biblical comparisons. This is coming from the King James Version. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt, Matazar Yam, again with ships. Or should I say Matazar Yam? I think that's how I said it, because you could say Matzar, some would say Tsar, or some would say Taza. So Matazar Yam, again with ships. And I want to make it clear, this is ancient Hebrew. I'm pronouncing this from ancient Hebrew. I'm not pronouncing this in the Israeli language. So again, with ships, Naya, by the way thereof I spake unto thee. thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold, makar, unto your enemies, I buy, or ayabai, for bondmen and bondwomen, ibad, yam, and no man shall buy you, qua na. Now let me read it one more time. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way thereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now let's read the NIV version of it. And I want to make it clear, I don't support the NIV, but this is just used for the sake of illustration and giving you an example. I want to make it clear, I'm not a supporter of the NIV, especially when you start knowing and understanding the manuscripts. The NIV come from what is called the Alexandrian manuscript, which is broken down into two key codexes, the Codex Vaticanus and the Codex Sinaiticus. Right. So I'm not getting into all of that right now, but there's a lot of corruption in this text when you compare it to the Alexandria or the Byzantine manuscripts. All right. So let's read it from the NIV perspective or transliteration. Yahweh will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey. Notice what it says. Yahweh will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey. I said you should never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. So let's reiterate this. It says from the NIV, it says, send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey. So let's see the definition of journey. This is coming from Oxford. An act of traveling from one place to another. The sub-entry, a long and often difficult process of personal change and development. Kind of waters it down when you see this in the NIV transliteration. So the NIV describes this consequence as a difficult process. So let's look at the Message Bible. Let's see what the Message Bible say. You know, the Message Bible is not a transliteration. I refer to it as a paraphrase Bible and kind of like a messy Bible, right? But let's see what it says. It says, Yahweh will ship you back to Egypt by a road I promise you'd never see again. There you'll offer yourselves for sale, both men and women, as slaves to your enemies, and not a buyer to be found. So these are different transliterations, not really getting into the transliterations, but really want to show you what they say about what's going to happen to our the Israelites, which is our ancestors. Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt. That's a key quote. So let's start with dealing with the name Egypt, right? The name Egypt, Matazar Yam, right? Egypt is a Greek name. Let me say that again. Egypt is a Greek name. Just like when you hear the term, like a lot of Kemet or guys that like to try to trip up and test our brothers and sisters with the Amen Ra nonsense. They'll say, hey, every time you say amen, you're giving worship to Amen Ra. Well, no, Amen Ra is a Greek name. The actual Egyptian god is Yamanu. All right. So the name Egypt itself is a Greek name. Let's go to the etymology of it. And notice what it says from Greek, Egyptos. All right. Let me say it again from Greek, Egyptos. So I want you to make sure you understand this. Egyptos is Greek. Goes on to say the Egyptian name Kemet or Kamat means black country, possibly in reference to the rich delta soil. And it goes on to say the Arabic Mitzr, or which is derived from Mitzzarim or Mitzzarim. That's what I just said, right? So the name of a son of biblical Ham, right? Notice what I said. I didn't say Ham, I said Ham, because that's how you would pronounce it in ancient Hebrew. Ham, not Ham, because that's another one that they would try to trip you up in by saying, hey, look, Abraham means that he's descendant of Israel and he's descendant of Ham, Shem and Ham. No, that's not correct. Because again, the actual pronunciation in ancient Hebrew is Ham, not Ham. You would not see a Ha in Abraham. You would not see a Ka in Abraham's name. In Israeli language, Chet. All right. You will not see that inside Abraham's name. So does the name Egypt mean bondage? Because many will argue and say, hey, Egypt does not mean bondage. But does this name Egypt, this Greek name Egypt, mean bondage? Matazar Yam. All right. Does it mean bondage? As we see here, Upper and Lower Egypt, Mitzrayim, you see it really doesn't give you much right here. But let's go to the primitive root. So we see this name, right? Matazar Yam, right? You see the masculine plural Yam, right? Just like when we say Alaha Yam, Alaha with the Yam at the end makes it plural. You use the masculine plural. Now, many would say Elohim, that's the Israeli pronunciation, Im, right? That is still considered the masculine plural. Wat or Ot, that's the feminine plural. So the masculine plural, Yam. So that's why you see me saying Matazar Yam. So the actual word that we have to focus on is Matazar. That will be the primitive root that we have to go to really start getting an understanding of what the word Egypt actually means. Hope this helps you guys. So now we're going to Matazar or Matzar, some will pronounce it, or Matzor. You see the colon, but that's a whole nother discussion as I started the lesson off with. But when we go to Matazar, it says a mound. But notice what it says in parentheses, besiegers, a siege. Now, when we come down here, defense, fenced, fortress, siege, stronghold. Then when we see here, siege, enclosure. Now we're getting somewhere. So Matazar means to besiege. So Matazar or Matazar, some will say again, Matzar or Matazar, comes from the primitive root Tazar, which means confine, adversary, assault, beset, but then we see again, besiege. So let's go to the Oxford Dictionary definition of besiege. Let's see what it says. Surround, in other words, a place with armed forces in order to capture it or force it to surrender. Lay siege to. So that still can tie into bondage. See, this is how they would sack a city. They would surround the city. This is how Jerusalem was sacked. They surround the city, make sure that all the key exit points are blocked, the roads coming in or out blocked. So that way they have to depend on the sources on the inside if it's a well-fortified location. So the goal is that the people will starve themselves. They will starve themselves. They'll run out of sources and then they'll surrender. And that's how they would sack the city. So surround a place with armed forces in order to capture it or force it to surrender. Lay siege to. All right, so let's go to siege. Let's see what the Oxford Dictionary say about siege. And notice what it says. Still ties in, but notice what it says, right? Did I do it right? Yeah, this is supposed to be siege up here, guys. Still has besiege. My apologies, but the definition is still the same as you see back bottom here, and that's why I put the link here. So, a military operation in which enemy forces surround a town or building, cutting off essential supplies with the aim of compelling the surrender of those inside. Just what I just explained to you. So, that's the whole goal. That's a burden. That is bondage. That is a weight. So, again, a military operation in which enemy forces surround a town or building, cutting off essential supplies with the aim of compelling the surrender of those inside. That is the same thing that you see a constrictor, a boa constrictor, a constricted type snake. This is how they operate. This is what the snake would do. The goal of a snake is to what? Wrap itself around its prey and squeeze it so that way it chokes. Every time it breathes out, the snake squeezes tighter to prevent its prey from what? Breathing out. All right. So that's a constrictor snake. That's what a siege is. It's the same concept. It goes on to say an operation in which a police or other force surround a building and cut off supplies with the aim of forcing an armed person to surrender. So again, key quote, cutting off essentials, supplies with the aim of compelling those to surrender, Matazar. Now let's go to Exodus chapter 1, verse 11 through 14. It says this: therefore, they did set over the taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. Let me read it again. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters, Mas Yam or Masa Yam, right? Notice you see Mas or Masa, right? Is there a coincidence? Many try to make fun when I was explaining how is it a coincidence that the slaves, our ancestors, were saying Masa versus master? Because initially, when I first heard them saying Masa in some of these older movies, I thought that they were just speaking broken English or poor English. But when you start understanding Hebrew, Masa means oppressor. You also see the word Nasa. But Masa Yam, right? Masa taskmaster, Masa. So Mas Yam or Masa Yam, plural, to afflict, Ainah, them with their burdens, Sabalath. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. So the more they afflicted them, in other words, the more they tried to what? Squeeze them. That's what it means. The more they start what? Squeezing them, trying to choke them. Why? They wanted to what? Destroy their hope, because they were fearful that the children of Israel outnumbered them, and that they wanted to make sure that Israel didn't know that for themselves. That's the same playbook. When you start understanding, for example, matter of fact, Elaine, that you see up here when we're dealing with the Elaine massacres. Elaine, that city of Elaine had literally 7,000 Caucasians living there at the time, but almost 30,000 Negroes. But it was the 7,000 Caucasians that was controlling them. When you look at Charleston, South Carolina, and that area, you had 45,000 Negroes living in that area, being controlled by 6,000 Caucasians. Almost 50,000 controlled by 6,000. So you still see the playbook right here, because they had to put things in place to try to make it hard for Israel because they knew if they understood truly who they are, that they were more powerful. They were even scared that if they came in contact with the other nations, and maybe those other nations would tell them or remind them of who they are and telling them, hey, wait a minute, you guys are bigger than the people that's oppressing you. And that will provoke them to do what? Fight. That's the same playbook, family. That's the same exact playbook. Verse 13, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. Right? So now they're trying to squeeze, they're trying to what? Strengthen their stronghold to serve Ibad with rigor, parak, and they made their lives bitter, marar, with hard bondage, quasha bondage, ibadah, and mortar and brick, and all matter of service, ibadah, in the field, all their service wherein they made them serve with rigor. So you see, what they did was they wanted to what? Cause them to lose focus on the minor things because they're bigger than the brick and mortar. They're bigger than the very things, the very tools that they were using to keep them in bondage. Israel was far bigger than that. So they had Israel focusing on the minors. Think about what we see today. We're good at focusing on the minors versus the major things. Number one, we have to come together. We have to realize we're not each other's enemies, truth be told. But unfortunately, many don't understand that. You got many leaders that are fleecing the people, trying to, bragging off of what they have. And, now that, anyway, that I'm not even going to get into that right now. We need to come together and be one. Akkad, be one people. So the Egyptians' goal was to cut off essential supplies used by Israel with the goal of compelling them to surrender. So here's the Hebrew definition of bondage, ibad or ibadah. Ibad is the primitive root. But this is what it actually would deal with the etymology first. It says legal condition of a serf or slave. A serf tenant farmer, right? Free-born farmer. Dwell, prepare, inhabit. And you see the Proto-Indo-European word bo, right? And it goes on to say to be, exist, grow. Bondage is connected to the word bond. And let's see what the word bond means. In a state of serf, unfree from bond. Notice what it says, tenant, farmer, holding land under a lord in return for customary service. That right there is more of a indentured servant right here. Holding land, notice what it says, holding land under a lord in return for customary service. But then it goes on to say husbandman, householder. This is where we start seeing a difference, more of an understanding when we go to the 13th century of this word. The sense of the noun deteriorated in English after the conquest and rise of the feudal system from free farmer to serf slave. But let's deal with this word. Let's peel the layers off this word. Let's step into it a little more. Let's go to bound. Right? Bound, compel. But when we look at the verb, right? When we go down here with the verb, it says meaning under obligation, made fast by tying. So does the name Egypt mean bondage? Yes and no. So Egypt's reputation is connected to Israel because they had them what? Bound, okay? In a siege. So that's the reputation between Israel and Egypt. So bring thee into Egypt means to be bound again by the spirit of Egypt. All right. That's plain and simple, straight to the point. Bring thee into Egypt means to be bound again by the spirit of Egypt. This is not a physical Egypt like we think, taking us right back to Egypt as we know it according to scriptures. Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Now, I have to show and prove that we're dealing with a spiritual Egypt. We have to really peel the layers off here. The key, it says, ye shall see them again no more forever. What does this mean? You guys know I quote this all the time. Ye shall see them again no more forever. Well, let's see what the word forever means. Awalam, it means eternity, always. So what does this mean? Is the Most High, did he blot out the Egyptians here in Exodus chapter 14? But it also means awalam, ancient, in other words, time, continuous, lasting, long time, perpetual. So the Egyptians as a nation, this is what it means. They had their authority over Israel removed. That's what it actually means. It says that the Egyptians will not have power over Israel ever again. That's what the text actually means. So the Egyptians as a nation had their authority over Israel removed, because we do know the Egyptians still exist. They existed after this, but they had their authority, they had their power removed. So the Egyptians, the nation, was not blotted out, but their control and authority over Israel was removed forever. Because remember, Moses said to Israel in Deuteronomy not to what? Abhor an Egyptian. The Egyptians, why? Because they provided Israel a place to stay. In so little words, they provided Israel a place to stay. So he said, do not what? Abhor or hate the the Egyptians. So we know the Egyptians were still in existence. So the Egyptians, the nation, as a nation, was not blotted out, but their control and authority over Israel was moved forever. Guys, it's like dealing with strongholds. The Most High could take that stronghold away from you, but doesn't mean that stronghold doesn't exist anymore. It just means that stronghold will not have power over you. For some of you guys that may have struggled with smoking, well, guess what? The Most High took the power of smoking from you, that strong device out of your desire for it away from you. But guess what? Those cigarettes, those cigars, whatever, those things still exist, just like alcohol. The Most High delivered you from alcohol. Guess what? The alcohol still exists. They're still selling it, but it means that it will not have power over you ever again. It will not be a stronghold over you. That's the same thing with Egypt. That's what this text is saying. So what is spiritual Egypt? Go to Revelation chapter 11, verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. Notice here, it says called Sodom and Egypt. Now we're dealing with the spirit. When you start understanding Sodom and Gomorrah, we know what they were known for: sexual perversions. And then when we look at Egypt, we know that Egypt was what? A place of bondage, a siege, right? So bring thee into Egypt means to be bound again by the spirit of Egypt. Let me say that again. Bring thee into Egypt means to be bound again by the spirit of Egypt. Let me say that one more time for the people in the back. Bring thee into Egypt means to be bound again by the spirit of Egypt. So the United States, they're not the Egyptians, but guess what? The United States operated in the spirit of Egypt. All the nations, all the Confederates, part of the Confederacy that came together to declare war on our community, They operated in the spirit of Egypt. They're not actually Egyptians, even though many of them try to say they are because of the whitewashing of Egypt. But guess what? They're not Egypt. They are behaving in the spirit of Egypt. Just like many would think that, hey, every Caucasian, hey, that you see, oh, those are Esau. No, they're operating in the spirit of Esau, right? The spirit of Esau. Anyway. So what was the backbone of the Egyptians' army Yah destroyed? Well, let me show you. It was their chariots and their horsemen. Though the Egyptians were defeated, yet Israel continued to give life to the Egyptians' defeated spirit. Let me say that again. Even though the Egyptians were defeated, but Israel continued to give them life. And I'm going to show you here. Deuteronomy 28:68. Let's tie this in. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So no man shall buy you. No man shall buy you. Buy, quana means purchase, recover, redeem. That's what quana means. Buy. It means purchase, recover, and redeem. So when these guys try to come up with these so-called gotcha moments, this is how you properly articulate. This is how you properly defend the text. Buy means purchase, recover, redeem. So when it says no man shall buy you, it's saying no man shall what? Redeem you. They can't give you the salvation that the Most High wants to have for our people. Salvation comes from the Most High. He makes that clear in the book of Isaiah. Salvation comes through him. In other words, he has the plan, and he will send the deliverers. He will send his messengers to do what? Recover his people. Redeem his people. That's another one that non-Messianics would try to trip you up in. I'm going to pull out the playbook on that. Some of the talking points of the non-Messianics, they take on the same talking points of the non-Messianic Jewish community. You know, many of them are taking on the same talking points. And I'll just pull out the checklist that I have, that I put together years on top of years ago, that I would use to debunk rabbis. All right. And this is even before, we transitioned our ministry out of Christianity. So I was debunking rabbis even back then. All right. Non-Messianic. But anyway, quana, it means to erect. It means to procure, especially by purchase, by implication, to own, attain, buy, buyer. But here's the kicker: redeem. So in the scriptures, Egypt symbolizes the entire world, right? And now here's the prophecy of redemption. Wherefore saying to the children of Israel, I am Yahweh, and I will bring you out from under the burdened Sabalah of the Egyptians, and I will rid you out of their bondage, and I will redeem Gaal, or some would say Gala, right? Because when you get to the primitive root, you'll see Gala, which also refers to captivity. It also transliterates to revelation, reveal, redemption. I will redeem Gala or Gaal, right? But actually, if we just say it from the primitive root word pronunciation, Gala, redeem. That's the name of what many would refer to as the Gullah people, or the Gala, which is a Hebrew word. I will redeem you with a stretched out Nata arm, Zarawai, or Zarwai, however you want to pronounce it, and with great judgment. So the Most High says, I will redeem you with a stretched out arm, and with great judgment. So, and I will redeem. So redeem again, Gala or Gaal, right? But we'll just go with the primitive root. Gala means to avenge, deliver, purchase, ransom, redeemer, revenge. So Yahweh Elohim said that he will redeem avenge, deliver, purchase, and provide a ransom for Israel with his stretched out arms. And he said, no man shall buy you. And actually, that's where you get to the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabets, called the what? Yod. The Yod, the pictograph, looks like what? Outstretched arms. The Yod means redeem, right? And that's what the Messiah was referring to, not even cutting the hairs off of that ancient Hebrew letter. We'll go back over that teaching again. I meant to put the letter here so that way I can give you an illustration, but I forgot. So no man shall redeem you. So Deuteronomy 28:68 is a prophecy that serves as a reminder that there is no salvation, no redemption in the system of man. Let me say that again. Deuteronomy 28:68 is a prophecy that, excuse me, my computer acting up here. So Deuteronomy 28:68 is a prophecy that serves as a reminder that there is no salvation, no redemption in the system of man. Let me say that one more time. There is a prophecy, Deuteronomy 28:68 is a prophecy that serves as a reminder that there is no salvation, no redemption in the system of man. This is what I mentioned earlier about 666, right? 666 means the system of man, the mark of the beast, the system of man. That's the key to understanding the mark of the beast is the what? System of man. We can easily say the institution of race is a system of man because the institution of race is used to what? Change the entire identity of the world. It literally flipped the world upside down. It took our people from being at the top and placed us at the bottom of the food chain. It took our people from being at the top of the scriptures and put us at the lower parts of the scriptures to where as though we can't even recognize ourselves, even when it's being taught, when it was taught to us. We had to be removed in order for the Most High to reveal His truth to us. Even though for my family, I knew that I was an Israelite. I knew that. I was already being told that, but we were still being raised up in the system of Christianity. So again, Deuteronomy 28:68 is a prophecy that serves as a reminder that there is no salvation, no redemption in the system of man. And I am not just, this scripture is not just referring to the military. Every aspect of the government is part of what? Man's system, from the educational system to the current, the employment system, to the the other governmental systems that you have here. All that is still part of man's system. The institution of race is what these governmental systems build their government off of, to make sure that no matter where we are, if any country that built their entire government off the institution of race, they are reminded to make sure that we are those that have been conquered, those that have been enslaved. All right. So let me highlight an article here. Black soldiers in the U.S. military during the Civil War. By the end of the Civil War, roughly 179,000 men, 10% of the Union Army, served as soldiers. This is coming from archives.gov. Let me read it again. By the end of the Civil War, roughly 179,000 Black men served as soldiers in the U.S. Army, and another 19,000 served in the Navy. Nearly 40,000 Black soldiers died over the course of 30,000 infections or disease. Black soldiers served with artillery and infantry and performed all non-combat support functions that sustained an army as well. You have Black carpenters, chaplains, cooks, guards, laborers, nurses, scouts, spies, steamboat pilots, surgeons, and teamsters also contributed to the war cause. There were nearly 80 Black commissioned officers, Black women who could not formally join the army, nonetheless. But anyway, I didn't put it all here. But you see that our ancestors served in the Civil War. But look at how we were treated during that time. That's what's important. Look at how we were treated during the time of the Civil War and still being treated to this day. Technically, they still vote on slavery. Technically, they still vote on voter rights. All the things that technically a citizen of the United States has. But they still have to vote on these things. Do you know the Republican Party just passed a bill, basically a bill that's going to further whitewash and water down what happened to us as a people, what happened to our ancestors, operating under the spirit of the wives of the Confederate, because they had a major plan put in, and they implemented that plan to water down history, water down the history books. Now we're immigrants instead of what? Kidnapped, prisoners of war. So what was President Lincoln's true position on slavery? See, our people served in the Civil War. He used our people as a pawn, right, during the Civil War. So what was President Lincoln's true position on us, even though he used us? Let's go to an article by history.com. Slavery was an unqualified evil to the Negro, the white man, and the state. And Abraham Lincoln in the 1850s, yet in his first inaugural address, Lincoln declared that he had no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with slavery in the states where it existed. Let me say that again. Lincoln declared that he had no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with slavery in the states where it exists. He reiterated this pledge in his first message to Congress on July 4th, 1861, when the Civil War was 3 months old. What explains this apparent inconsistency in Lincoln's statement? How did he get from his pledge not to interfere with slavery to a decision a year later to issue an emancipation? So I want to delve into this, peel the layers off of this, just so that way you can understand this. So you can really understand this, family. I want to peel the layers here. Let's peel off go through the layers here. Let's get a better understanding here. My apologies. I'm having some technical glitches here on my end. That's why I'm pausing here. My computer acting up here. But nevertheless, what was President Lincoln's true thoughts? What was President Lincoln's true thoughts about the Negroes? These are his own words. And I have his speeches that he gave at his speech, Charleston, Illinois. I have his speeches. I actually have his speeches. And this is coming from his actual speeches that I copied them from, these quotes from. He says, "I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races, that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes." Notice what he says. He is not in favor of giving us voting rights, making us jurors, nor of qualifying them hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I will say, in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, right? They said there's a difference, right? This is still tying into the narrative that was being taught in the church at that time, that the Negroes were beasts, that we were created on the 5th day versus the 6th day of creation. Many of them were teaching in Christianity that, and Catholicism, that we were beasts. Look up the article or look up the old reference that you could download for free, Negro a Beast. So again, he says, I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality, and in as much as they cannot so live. While they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. This is the institution of race that I go over all the time, written by Audrey Smetley for PBS. She was an anthropologist, and she said that that's basically, in a nutshell, the whole goal of the institution of race. It was created to make sure that there's a separation between those that are deemed to be superior and those that are deemed to be inferior. And those that have been deemed to be inferior are the conquered and enslaved. They identified our people and the Native Americans here in this country. And much as any of her men am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. And what? He is in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. He is still echoing the institution of race. So he goes on to say, our Republican system was meant for a homogeneous people, he declared. As long as the Negroes continue to live with the whites, they will constitute a threat to the national life. Family life might also collapse, and the increase of the mixed breed bastards might someday challenge the supremacy of the white man. Let me back it up so that way you guys can see what it says here. He says, might someday challenge the supremacy of the white man. So I want to say this to you, family. Progression. Progression is not freedom. Let me say that again. Progression is not freedom. And when I point out about Red Summer, which many don't like to deal with, when you understand Red Summer, right? Red Summer happened across this country. It wasn't just the southern states. It was up north. It was Maryland. It was DC. It was some of these other places. I'm gonna share a little bit on. I think I'll put it in. I may have enough time to put it in here. If not, I'll pull up a source and show you that you had race wars, so to speak, that was in DC. Race wars that was in College Park, Maryland. See, we think that, according to how history has been taught, we think that Red Summer was only in the South. No, they had lynchings all up in New York, lynchings up in New Jersey, lynchings up in Pennsylvania, lynchings up in Massachusetts, lynchings all across this country. All right. So progression is not freedom. We see our people making great strides. I have an entire encyclopedia that I purchased for my daughters when they were little, showing the accomplishments of our people. That's progression, but that's not freedom. Let me say that again. Progression is not freedom. Revolutionary War. Progression is not freedom. Over 5,000 Negroes fought side by side with Caucasian soldiers with one goal, with one objective, with one purpose: freedom. During this time, there were over 45,000 Negroes enslaved in the 13 colonies. Now, here it is. Our ancestors fighting for this country, the Revolutionary War. Many of our own relatives fought this Revolutionary War, fought against the Brits, because remember, when we start dealing with Spanish Florida, which was owned by the Spaniards, the United States was still at war with the Brits. So many of our ancestors fled to Georgia, not up north. When you start dealing with the Underground Railroad, our ancestors they were not fleeing from Savannah, Georgia to Canada or up north. Didn't make sense. when the borders of Florida was an hour and a half away. Was an hour and a half away when you're driving at the most. So of course you put that into walking and traveling. So you're probably looking at, let's just say, 5 hours, 5 to 6 hours of a travel time. But anyway, but it was much closer. So our ancestors actually was fighting against many of our own ancestors who made their way to Spanish Florida for freedom. During the Revolutionary War, when we really get the full understanding of the Gullah Wars. The Gullah Wars was happening back down during this time. Do you know that we had our ancestors in Savannah, Georgia, help save Savannah? Some of their statues are right in front of the First African Baptist Church down in Savannah, Georgia. And guess what tribe that they were from? Igbo. The drummer and some of those guys there helped liberate Haiti. The drummer became the first king of a liberated Haiti. And look at how they've been blacklisted. Many of our ancestors fought in a war, helped liberate this country, and all along, 450,000 Negroes were enslaved. Our ancestors didn't get the things that was promised to them in helping, being a major player in securing Savannah, Georgia. Didn't get a single thing out of that, right? And still, many of them went back into slavery. So redemption can only come through the Most High, Yahweh Elohim's outstretched arms, his outstretched arm in his great judgment. Yah the Father is our Redeemer. Through Yah the Father, his Son, the Hebrew Israelite Messiah, is the ransom. Ransom comes from the primitive root word pod, right? You see pod yan or padayan comes from the primitive root word pod, which means to release, preserve, deliver, and let be redeemed. Pod, right? Mark 10, verse 45. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and give his life as a what? Ransom, padyan or padayan for many. So he was sent here by the Most High to give his life as a ransom, redeem. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5 and 6. For there is one Elohim and one mediator between Elohim and men, the man Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, who gave himself a ransom for all to be testified in due time. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 5 through 6. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and Yahweh hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. So we see the scriptures confirm this. So the consequences in Deuteronomy 28 is Yahweh Elohim's great judgment to a disobedient nation. So when we go back to verse 68, Deuteronomy 28:68, and Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Right? So again, you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies. In an attempt to avoid the Most High's great judgment, Israel will attempt to enter an agreement with Egypt, as we see today. Many of us have looked at the military as being a form of salvation. Many of us have looked at going to college and getting a higher education as a form of salvation. But guess what? We as a community is still in the same position. Many of us has done a number of different things to try to what? Circumvent the judgment of the Most High by entering into agreements, going back to Egypt. So in attempt to avoid the Most High's great judgment, Israel will attempt to enter agreements with Egypt. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1 through 3. And this is confirm this, right? But this is continuously, not just at this point in time, but we can, even today, we still are entering into agreements with spiritual Egypt, hoping to circumvent the judgment with the goal of using the system of man as a form of salvation. Woe, Yahweh, to the rebellious Rarawah's children, saith Yahweh. Now, some would say Rawas or Rawas, saith Yahweh. Take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. Notice what it says, in that cover with a covering. See, y'all better be careful with all these covering doctrines that are out here. What is the main thing that the church try to do? They pushing this doctrine called what? Covering, sonship. When I was in Christianity, I didn't subscribe to this sonship, this orphan spirit that they try to put on you and say that you need someone to be your spiritual father. So we see here covering. It says, woe to the rebellious children, saith Yahweh, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. That walk to go down to Egypt. In other words, that want to go down to Egypt, that's traveling to Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. The shadow, remember, Egypt has no more power. So it says the shadow, this is what? The influence. They have no power. So those that have gone down to Egypt, the leaders have gone down to Egypt, didn't go to the Most High. They're doing this under their own strength, under their own power, to go to Pharaoh, right? To strengthen themselves because a judgment is coming. A bigger threat is coming because Israel went into sin again. So the Most High is sending another kingdom that's going to conquer Egypt and the Israelites and bring Israel back into captivity as a judgment. Verse 3, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh, ma'awaz, let me say that again, ma'awaz of Pharaoh be your shame, Basha, in the trust in the shadow, Tazal, or Sal, or Salah, however you want to pronounce it. Some pronounce it different ways. Of Egypt, your confusion. It says again, therefore shall the strength, my was or my was of Pharaoh shall be your shame, by Shah, in the trust of the shadow, Tazal or Tazalah of Egypt, your confusion. So Yahweh Elohim pronounced a woe, why, a strong warning of judgment on the rebellious people of Judah because they continued to refuse his help. Time and time again, they rejected the Most High and their hearts became hardened. A rebellious Judah formed an alliance with the Egyptians. Judah was facing a great threat by the Assyrians, or by Assyria, by Assyria. And so the leaders, excuse the typo, so the leaders believed that the nation's only hope was to form an alliance with Egypt, the very community the Most High delivered them from. So many of us are doing that right now, enter into an agreement trying to use Egypt as a way of being delivered. So hope, right? What is hope? As you see here, a precept, statute, decalogue, or pentateuch. That really doesn't tell you much. But here's the kicker: law, direction, instruction. instruction, direction, right? Subentry number 2, which is highlighted, instruction in Messianic age, right? So hope, taqwa or taqwa, right? This is where you get the word that transliterates tikva. But hope, taqwa or taqwa, it literally means a cord. That's what it really means. Hope literally means a lifeline. Hope, when you see the word hope, it simply means a lifeline. And here's the Oxford Dictionary definition of it: a thing on which someone or something depends, or which provides a means of escape from a difficult situation. Entry number 2, a rope or line used for life saving, typically one thrown to rescue someone in difficulties in water or used by sailors to secure themselves to a boat. So you see that the purpose of a lifeline, that's what hope is for. Hope is what? There to what? Be a lifeline to Yah's people. That's what hope is. The lifeline to Yah's people. Taqwa or taqwa, right? A rope or line used for saving life. So the key is, what is your rope connected to? Who is your hope? Many of us have our hope connected into things, the creation versus the creator himself, as Apostle Paul pointed out. So what is on the other side of your lifeline? What is the anchor? What kind of anchor do you have? All right. So that's what hope really means. So stand and rejoice, cheer up, be glad, have joy while holding on to your lifeline. Let me say that again. Stand, rejoice. And this is going back to Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14. Right? Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. Well, if I want to transliterate it in a different way to make sure you understand it clearly, it means stand, rejoice, cheer up, be glad, have joy while holding on to your lifeline. Stand, not to zob, and rejoice. Shamak, cheer up, be glad, have joy while holding on to your lifeline. So let's finish this up with Isaiah. It says, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help and stay on horses. This is verse chapter 31. And notice what it says: and stay on horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek Yahweh. So woe, why, to them that go down, Yarad Yam, to Egypt for help, Azarah, and stay on horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and in the horsemen because they are very ma'ad, sound like mad, right? Ma'ad, strong, atazam. In other words, he's saying, woe for those that's trying to put their hope and trust in what's supposed to be the strength of the Egyptians, that the Most High proved in the past that they have no power. But let me give you proper clarity on this. We're going to touch on this after I read verse 2 and 3 here. Yet he also is wise and will bring evil and will not call back his words, but will arise against the house of the evildoers and against the help of them that work iniquity. So Judah's hope was not to be found in the military might of Egypt, but rather in the power of Yah. What was the backbone of the Egyptians' army Yah destroyed? Right? Guess what? The backbone was their chariots, right? Rakab, their chariots and horsemen, right? That was basically the special forces of the Egyptians. And now Israel is trying to find salvation in it. Like many of us today, we're trying to find salvation in the systems of man. We're trying to find salvation by going into the army, going to the Air Force, going into the Marines, going into the Navy, going into the Coast Guards, going into the reserves, trying to find salvation by going into the educational systems of man versus going directly to the Most High first and allowing him to lead you. That's why it's so easy for many to get into these different places, go into these different institutions, and it's easy for them to walk away from the Most High. Why? Because they worshiped the system of man and not worshiping the Most High himself. All right. So the chariots and their horsemen, that is special forces. So Israel is seeking salvation from the Egyptians because of their special forces. Verse 3, this is what it says. Now the Egyptians are men. All right, let me say that again. Now the Egyptians are men, Adam, and not, your translation is going to say God. Right now the Egyptians are men and not God, not Elohim. This shuts down the narrative that many will say, hey, you be God, the 5%ers, and the Kemet guys that's trying to teach, hey, you're God. The Bible, no, let's put it in this proper perspective. Here it's saying now the Egyptians are men and not Elohim. Their horses flesh and not spirit. When Yahweh shall stretch, there we have it again, will stretch out his hand, Yod, both he that helpeth shall fall, right? And he that hoping shall fall down, and they shall fail together. Remember, Yod, remember what we said earlier, Yod means what? Redemption. The pictograph is stretched out hands. So guess what? Your salvation is only going to come by the Most High. He's the one that authorizes whatever means he's going to use to redeem you. And for us to get redemption, it has to come through his son, the Messiah, the Hebrew Israelite Messiah. No other system, no other thing that you can use as a medium, in other words, a workaround, because that's what witchcraft promotes, is using alternatives to try to bring salvation, to bring alternatives, allow you to go and engage in alternatives to try to relieve or remove a stronghold in your life. That is witchcraft. That's mediums. That's why many people are getting into all kinds of mystical systems, because they try to take what they think is the easy way out, which actually is a longer journey, trying to circumvent the judgment of the Most High. Instead of just going through that straight gate, many are trying to go through alternatives. You cannot see the straight gate from the wide gate, and you cannot see the wide gate from the straight gate. Guess what? There are two different paths in two different directions. Either you want to commit to being on the straight gate, or you want to commit to being on the wide gate. That road that is called straight, or you want to be on that wide road, which is the wide road is cleaner than the straight gate, right? Going through that straight and narrow way, because you're going through that straight gate, you got to let go of some things. Right? When you go through the eye of that needle, you gotta let go of things in order to make it through. That wide gate, you don't have to give up anything. And that's why many people are on that wide gate thinking that they're on the road that's called straight. That's what you call deception. That's what you call delusion. So the Egyptians are men, Adam, and not God, Elohim, not the Most High. The horses are flesh. In other words, don't get caught up in what you see. Now, the Egyptians are men and not Yah, right? Israel had to be reminded not to worship and idolize the Egyptians. So let's see what the etymology of the word now, let's see what it means. Now, because that's what we saw here. It said now. In other words, now, at present, immediately, now that. In other words, immediately, right now, in this presence, not tomorrow, not yesterday, immediately, in this present time. Judah had to be reminded of their past and present and their what? Now. Judah had to be reminded in this present time immediately that the Egyptians are men and not Yah. We try to delay stuff. No, they needed to understand that in the now, in the presence, immediately understand that, to turn quickly from their evil ways, turn away from the path that they're trying to go on. All right. So let's go to Ezekiel chapter 21, verse 23. Tie this all in. Son of man, I have broken Notice what it says. Son of man, I have broken Shabar, the arms, Zarawai of Pharaoh, Pariah, king of Egypt. And lo, it shall not be bound, Kabash, up to be healed. Rapawath, to put a roller to bind it, to make it strong to hold the sword. Notice what it says. It says, the Most High has broken the arms of Pharaoh. In other words, Pharaoh cannot redeem you. Remember, the Most High's arm stretches out to us, the Yod. So it's saying here, Pharaoh cannot redeem you. He said he has broken his arms. He is useless. He said the only power that Pharaoh has is the power that you are allowing him to have over you. His arms are broken. So therefore, you are allowing Pharaoh, he has to influence you. Right? Hasatan is what? The prince of the air, manipulation, manipulates you to thinking that, hey, you doing his work for him, that, hey, let me do this for you, Pharaoh. Let me lift this thing up for you, Pharaoh. You're working for him. He's using your arms to what? Keep you in bondage. That's what Pharaoh did in Egypt, right? He used Israel to do his dirty work. He gave the illusion that he had power, but he really didn't have the power like the Egyptians thought they did. But again, son of man, I have broken the arms of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and lo, it shall not be bound up to be healed. In other words, there's no healing coming to it. There's no redemption coming to them. To put a roller to bind it, to make it strong to hold the sword. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, behold, I am against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and will break his arms. Notice what it says, and break his arms, the strong, and that which was broken, and I will cause the sword to fall out of his hand. So even if he called himself getting his strength back, he said, I'm gonna break his arms again. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and will disperse Zarai them through the country. So we see that Israel, not only Israel was scattered, but we see that the Egyptians were scattered too. He said, and I will scatter Egyptians among the nations. So when you understand even the current Egypt, many of the Egyptians fled further into Africa. That's a fact. What you see in Egypt is not the original people. Those are Turks. Those are Arabs. So Egypt, the nation, existence was not blotted out. Again, remember what I said early on. The existence was not blotted out, but the control and authority over Israel was removed. Egypt's reputation is connected to Israel because they held them in bondage, right? Remember, going all the way back to what we started with, this is the NIV version of it. Yahweh will send you back into ships to Egypt on a journey. And I said, you should never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. In other words, you're going to try to enter into agreements to circumvent the judgment, circumvent the system, circumvent with the Most High, his chastisement. You will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as indentured servants, right? This is indentured servitude, a person who signs and bound by indentures to work for another for a specific time, specifically in return for payment and travel expenses and maintenance. Because guess what? When you go into the military, you're basically is following this guidelines. You're offering your life as a collateral to be what? Indentured service for the military for a specified time. You could go in for 4 years. You could go in for 6 years or 2 years or whatever the commitments is. I did 8 years, right? But nevertheless, that's indentured servitude. So you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as indentured servitudes or indentured servants, and no man nor his system will redeem you. So again, fraternities and sororities will not redeem you. And I just want to take one little piece of history, and we're going to wrap this up here because I'm getting close here. Been going for almost 2 hours now. So let me show you here. Let me show you something here. Sound like Fire Marshal Bill. Let me show you something, right? Let's go to an article about the Elaine race riots, right? And in the back drop you see here, notice it says these are what the killing fields. This is dealing with Phillip County, and this is the Elaine massacre here. And there was multiple across the country. All right. So the Elaine race riots, 1919. And this is what really stood out to me, because in the article that I shared, remember, we were dealing with sharecropping. We was dealing with how the plantation owners were basically reneging, was using deceptive practices to keep our ancestors in bondage to them. So what they attempted to do, they created a union, right? And even our people tried to create a union, but they created a union. And let me show you what's on your screen. This article comes from the Arkansas Historical Quarterly, summer 1960, volume 19, number 2, page 142. Right? Actually, this is page 145. This is what it says. The union was a fraternal and social organization. Uh-oh. Guys, you'll be surprised how powerful fraternities and sororities are. The Masonic groups are. The Freemasons. You'll be surprised how deep and how far, how outstretched their arms are. But they cannot bring you redemption. Remember what I said. Only the Most High can redeem you. So our ancestors connected to the union, which is a fraternal order, and they tried to create their own fraternal order, and it didn't work. The union was a fraternal and social organization modeled after Masonic groups with a religious and biblical base. There were officers, dues, application forms, membership cards, and special rallying songs. Provision was made for a salaried deputy whose duty was to organize other clubs in the country. Over the local clubs, also called lodges and orders, was the Grand Lodge of the Union. Notice what I'm saying. The unions that you see, the whole structure, the whole infrastructure is of a Masonic order. Also called lodges and orders was the Grand Lodge of the Union, also referred to as the Grand Order. Its purpose was to further advance the cause, uniting the race into a perfect union in various countries. So when you see what? Perfect union, that is a Masonic term. I hope y'all grabbed that nugget there. The Grand Lodge had power to levy special taxes on subordinate lodges. And that's right. George Washington was a Mason. All of those guys were Masons. So the Grand Lodge had power to levy special taxes on subordinate lodges for the purpose of purchasing land for the Union. Land for the Union. Now notice this here. Pay attention to this right here. Twice a year, the Grand Lodge, composed of 3 delegates from subordinate lodges, was to meet at the country seats of respective counties. It goes on to say, the promotive literature of the Union made its appeal to Negroes to affiliate by quoting Bible passages. That's the playbook with the fraternities and sororities. Quote Bible passages to us to reel us in. That's what we see happening right now. We're quick to embrace people with Bible passages. Many people are quick to reject Kwame Brown because he's not quoting Bible passages, right? If he quote Bible passages, then you'll receive them. Kwame Brown, I support everything that he's doing. Why? Because his narrative that he's putting out there is enough. We need to stop tearing down one another. Stop doing the work of the oppressors. So Kwame Brown, he made it clear. So Negroes to affiliate themselves by quoting biblical passages and asserting the need for economic justice and social equality. That's the playbook right there. Just throw out economic justice and social equality and a few Bible passages. We good. That's the playbook for elections, right? Every politician just quote a couple of Bible passages and say, hey, you're all about economic justice and social equality, and we got them. They got us hooked. Each applicant desiring to join the union had to undergo an examination and answer under oath such questions as, do you attend church? Notice the brainwashing. Do you attend church? Still pushing what? The institution. Christianity is an institution. Catholicism is an institution, right? A system of man. The Most High didn't create Catholicism. The Most High did not create Christianity. He did not create Islam. He did not create any of these belief systems. He did not create Judaism. So do you attend church? Do you believe in country? Do you believe in God? And will you defend this government and her constitution at all times? This literature was also characterized by an official tone as if the union was sponsored by the federal government. See the hustle here? We still see the playbook right now. We see, guys, I'm giving you some nuggets here, some major nuggets. So when you join a union, guess what? You join in a fraternity. The fraternity is all around you. It's almost like the Matrix. And many people are struggling to get out of the Matrix. That's the issue. Many people don't want to get out of the system of fraternities. That's the religion. That's the new world religion, or the renewed religion, is fraternities and sororities, the Masonic order. That is a true religion. So the educational system will not redeem you. Let me just share this last piece here, since I have it up here. This is Georgetown slavery reparations for the Negro slaves. Now, I'm just using Georgetown as an example. But guess what? All of the major universities that was around at this time use us as collateral to pay off debts, to secure land, to secure properties. But let me show you here, Georgetown University, right? This is the hustle here. Georgetown Slavery Archive is a repository of materials relating to the Maryland Jesuits. Do I need to explain what Jesuits is? We're going to do a whole separate teaching on that. We're going to teach on Jesuits and how it connects to the Jewish community. But relating to the Maryland Jesuits, Georgetown University, and slavery, this project was initiated by the Archives subgroup of the Georgetown University Working Group on Slavery, Memory, and Reconciliation. So, Articles of Agreement between John F. Muletti, of Georgetown District of Columbia. Now, look at this here. 19th June 1838, Articles of Agreement between Thomas F. Muletti of Georgetown District of Columbia of one part, and Jesse Beatty, is that Beatty? Yeah. And Henry Johnson of the state of Louisiana of the other part. Thomas F. Muletti sells to Jesse Beatty and Henry Johnson 272 Negroes. Georgetown was built off of selling our ancestors. And I'm going to tell you, it was far more than what you see here. This is just the ones that they made public record, but these universities used us as collateral. We should not have to pay a single dime to any of these universities. We should be able to go to any school for free if we choose to. But we're caught up in the hustle. How many of our ancestors going to Georgetown right now in debt? Paying $40,000 and $50,000 per year for tuition. We should not have to pay for any school, including the black colleges. Because unfortunately, the black colleges are getting ridiculous with their prices as well. You're talking $35,000, $40,000 to go to Howard University easily per year. The whole concept initially was to make it affordable and easy for our community to go, because we were being rejected by these universities that built their entire schools off of the backs of us. But now you got to go into debt. It's no different. Anyway, but Thomas F. Maletti sells to Jesse Beatty and Henry Johnson 272 Negroes, right? So let's again reiterate: masters must answer the Moberly Diaries, or Moberly Diaries, however you want to pronounce it. All right, let's go into the diaries, part 1. Some years ago, and this is some sick stuff right here, family. Some years ago, blacks were more easily kept in due subordination and were more patient under the rod of correction. In other words, abuse. They're saying we were easily controlled by what? Them physically abusing us. That's what it's just simply saying. Than they are now, because then discipline flourished, but now it is going to decay. The present white generation seems to lose sight of the old observation. In other words, they're saying that, hey, the newer white slave owners are losing, forgetting what the basic foundation of how to discipline us, how to keep us in order, how to tame us, a la, aka the Willie Lynch letter. Side of the old observation: the better a Negro is treated, the worse he becomes. Doesn't it sound like the Willie Lynch letter that many would try to argue tooth and nails? Some from our own community stating, oh, the Willie Lynch letter is fake. Anyway, the better a Negro is treated, the worse he becomes. It may be struck out, said that the experimental truth of the above observation gave rise to the following lines: tender hand brush a nettle. So what is the subject here? Slave abuse of slave labor, slaves, United States social condition, master and servant. That's the overall subject in this article. So let's go here. Let me give you some more, some additional information on here. So masters must answer the fault for their slaves. That's what they're telling you in this article. The information I'm presenting to you, for exposing the lives by not providing them with beds and comfortable housing, permitting whole families of children without regard to sex to sleep in the same bed, by which means they become corrupt in their tender years. Notice what they were doing here. They were having little children sleep in the same bed with adults, with grown men, girls and boys sleeping in the same bed with grown men, permitting whole families of children without regard to sex to sleep in the same bed, by which means they become corrupt in their tender years. In other words, they are molested, not providing them with necessary food and raiment, and thus refusing to pay their laborers their wages, a sin crying to heaven for vengeance. All right, I could bring more of that to you guys, but I just want to just give you a little some understanding of when we start dealing with Memorial Day and why it's kind of like a bittersweet thing to me. I cut off the presentation because we could go on for another hour and a half. Right. So I just want to share with you, every governmental system was in on enslaving us. We cannot find salvation through any of these systems of man, period. Instead, we are going into, our ancestors, brothers and sisters are going deeper and deeper into debt to these educational institutions. We're using our souls as collateral for these different fraternities and sororities. Right now, I mean, it's sad that many will pump their chest. You have leaders that is literally selling out their own people for the sake of their institutions, for the sake of their unions, the sake of their fraternities and sororities, for the sake of the governmental systems that they're pushing. So family, I know I gave you a lot of information here. Like I said, I'm going to stop here. I went a little longer than what I anticipated on, but I did want to at least do a lesson on explaining Deuteronomy 28:68. Family, you're not going to find salvation in any of these man-made institutions. The salvation is going to come through the Most High. Now, the Most High can have you or open up doors for you to go to certain these different means of getting to a certain point, these different avenues, whether it's by way of the military or through school, through college. I did both. But his purpose is going to be to redeem, to do his work, not for you to build up your own self, not to further the spirit, the agenda of those that have oppressed you. Because if we truth be told, Daniel came up in the institution of the Babylonians. Remember, 3 years later, after being in that system, they had to go before the king. But they stayed true to the things of the Most High. They drew a line and said, enough is enough. I'd rather die before I compromise myself like that. And they were what? Raised up in captivity. So we cannot allow captivity to be an excuse on why there's so much compromise. So we can see that Moses came up in the ranks in Egypt. We can see Joseph came up in the ranks of Egypt. We can see Nehemiah was in the ranks, right? He was Xerxes' cupbearer. But he still remembered ultimately his roles and responsibilities. He still remembered what the Most High called him to do. He still remembered his heritage, even in the midst of the situation that they were in. So, family, I appreciate you guys for taking time out. I know I didn't schedule this live. I'm going to take it down. For those that want to connect to the ministry, I apologize. I didn't get a chance to check my email over the past couple of days. Pray for my family. Nephew had he was discovered dead in his apartment this past weekend, Saturday night. So my family is dealing with mourning right now. So just continue to lift my family up in prayer. So I really haven't had a chance to really go into my emails, to really check my emails. But again, if for any one of you guys that would like to sow into the ministry, the Cash App is below. And I believe PayPal is Passion for Reconciliation. But I'm going to make sure I confirm that as well. And I'll post that as well. Some of the other avenues for those that want to sow into the ministry. And if you want to become connected with PFR, if you don't have a place of worship where you are, shoot me an email. And I did talk to one of the elders inside our assembly to start monitoring the inbox, so that way he'll fill you in with whatever the next steps. If any of you guys would like to be connected to PFR, you do not need to be out there floating by yourself. Stability is everything, but I know that the day and time we live in is hard because there's a lot of predators that are out there. All right. So again, family, appreciate you guys for taking time out to support. I thank you for even getting the channel up to where it is, over 6,000 subscribers. And that's in spite of being shadow banned, and in spite of YouTube having me banned from messing with my lives. I couldn't go live for 4 months for no reason. Also suppressing, unsubscribing people from the channel. They have been doing that. And I'm finding out from a number of people that are telling me that they didn't know that I was unsubscribed. I can't do that on my end. That's what they're doing. So with that being said, family, I hope this helps out. And I'll just give some quick shout outs before I wrap up, as I stated I would. Let's see here. I want to say peace and blessings to Brew Queen Yisrael. I want to say peace and blessings to you. I want to say peace and blessings to my buddy Jay Highstyle. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Appreciate all that you do, Doctor. Ruhama, want to say peace and blessings to my cousin. Ruhama, Roland Hughes, want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Let's see. Eric Tinsley, want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Who else do we have here? C. Williams, 26, want to say peace and blessings to you. Miss B, want to say peace and blessings to you. Joy, want to say peace and blessings, want to say shalom or shalom to you. Yaya, want to say peace and blessings to you. I appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule to watch this presentation. Who else do we have here? Nicole Levels, appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule. Shalom to you. Let's see here. All right, just scrolling through here. Want to say peace and blessings to Angela Caraway. Appreciate you, sis, for your support. Appreciate all that you do. Let's see here, and I will be reaching out to you offline. I appreciate you, sis. Let's see here. Angie Love Yah, appreciate you, sis. Appreciate you for tuning in. Appreciate you for the love and support. Thank you for all that you do. Let's see here. Sister Carol, got to say peace and blessings to my sister. Been holding it down with the moderator. Thank you for your prayer. Thank you for your support over the years. Appreciate you, sis. Leah, I want to say shalom to you. Sister Yvette here, want to say peace and blessings to you. Want to say shalom to you. Who else do we have here? Want to say peace and blessings to my fellow geek here, Ashley Just Souls. So want to say peace and blessings to you. Had to catch myself. I was about to go geek mode a few times, but I had to reel it in. All right. Well, peace and blessings to you, sis, for tuning in. Sonia Johnson, peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. I think I just scrolling here trying to get as many as I can, family. Forgive me if I can't get to everyone. Rohan, want to say peace and blessings to you. Want to say shalom to you. Appreciate you. Adina. Who else do we have here? I'm going through here. Let's see. All right, got as much as I can, as many as I can. Truth Hurts, peace and blessings. Sister Knits and more. I want to thank you for the words of comfort for the bereavement that my family is in today. I appreciate you. Victor Baxter as well. Thank you for your prayers. Keep us lifting in prayer, family. And Ben's King, peace and blessings to you. Cindy Carr, my life, peace and blessings. Mike Watson, thank you for your condolences. I really appreciate it. And Dree Lee, I want to say peace and blessings to you as well. So I think I got everyone. And if I didn't call your name out, it's not done intentionally. Like the old school would say, don't charge it to my head, not to my heart. All right. So really appreciate you, family. And again, as we wrap up here, I want to just close out with the final thoughts of Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14. The Most High said to Israel, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvations of Yahweh. He said that these Egyptians that you see today, as we covered today, these Egyptians that you see today, these strongholds that you see today, this suppression, all the things that you see that's being done to our community today will not have power over us ever again. The Most High will fight for us. Let me say that again. The Most High will fight for us, but we have to hold our peace, family. We cannot go back. We cannot stay here. We have to keep moving forward. Shalom.